Weightlifting programming, and periodization for that matter, has been made to seem like an ancient art through the internet that only geniuses and gurus can even begin to comprehend. I'm here today to show you that it's actually pretty simple and for the most part, overcomplicated. Now, I've followed programs that have led me to the elite level, being the Olympics, the World Championships, the Commonwealth Games, among others. And believe it or not, it's actually not that different to the way that I program for hundreds of athletes worldwide of all skill levels. Today, I'm going to show you, in its most simple terms, the outline when it comes to making a weightlifting program. And this outline will be shown through the manipulation of 3 pillars that make up a weightlifting program. Those 3 pillars being volume, intensity, and specificity. Before we start, I'll quickly define them all. Volume, meaning how many sets and reps we're doing. Intensity, meaning how heavy we're lifting. And specificity, meaning how close these exercises are in relation to what we're trying to achieve. In this case, the snatch and the clean and jerk. Now, to begin to manipulate these 3 pillars across a weightlifting program, we're going to break the program today into 3 phases. Starting the program with an accumulation phase, where the goal here is to simply build general strength, power, and work capacity. And when we look at this fancy contraption I've got up here with these 3 levers listed being our 3 pillars, you can see that when we start a program, volume is high and intensity and specificity is a bit lower. This phase is where we may be doing 7+ reps in a set for our squat, deadlifts, and other strength exercises, doing more bodybuilding work, perhaps plyometric work, and even more power variations of our Olympic lifts to build upon that power and speed. Not to mention the Olympic lifting work may include more complexes in order to get more volume in. Essentially, this all relates to building general strength, speed, power, and work capacity. And after some time of doing this accumulation phase, we're going to be in need of a deload week. The amount of times it takes for people to need a deload week does vary depending on how long you've been weightlifting for. If you're someone who's a beginner, you may not need a deload week for months. If you've been doing it for a while, or perhaps you're a master's lifter, you may need one a little more frequently, every 2 to 3 weeks. Every 4th week being a deload week is somewhat of a rule of thumb, but it's not a clear rule. Essentially, in a deload week, we lower the intensity and the volume in order to let the body breathe and recover somewhat before we then ramp up again. And as we begin to deload from an accumulation phase, we then begin to work into our transmutation phase, phase 2 of 3 of this program. And although this sounds fancy, all it means is aiming to transfer all of that non-specific work over into our Olympic lifts. If we look at the levers again, we can see that the volume is beginning to drop and the specificity and the intensity is starting to rise. Squats and our other strength exercises begin to lower in volume from 5 down to 3 reps as we begin to dial things in a bit more. Now, there's still some variation and even bodybuilding work, plyometric work. Those don't need to go out completely, but it just may not be as intense as it once was in the accumulation phase. Now, as we've reached the end of this, we will then have another deload week to ensure that the body can recover, before we then transition into our competition prep or peaking phase. If we look at the levers, this is where we begin to lock in. Volume has dropped, intensity and specificity have gone way up. Generally speaking, we're working towards hitting new 1 rep maxes at the end of the block or potentially competing. And for our strength work, we'll either look to test this as well or keep the rep range from 2 to 3 reps if you don't want to test these movements. Now, I'm still not against keeping some bodybuilding work, some plyometric work, or other modes of training that you enjoy doing, but just not as intensely as we once did in our previous 2 training phases. Now, alongside beginning to taper off certain higher volume aspects of training, I personally, as I approach a max out or a competition, also peak from my technical focuses that I'm giving each exercise. For example, once we're in the accumulation phase at the start of a training block, that's when you may be giving yourself the most technical cues to work on weaknesses. As I approach a competition or a max out day, I tend to think of less and less cues, ideally 1 max per movement. I'm hoping that all the prior work that I put in will then be somewhat automatic as I go into autopilot mode among those heavier attempts, as you don't want to be overthinking when you're lifting too heavy. And then what didn't stick or still needs work, I can then double down on once I go back into an accumulation phase. Now, some final things to mention that people tend to question commonly when it comes to programming is 1, a program is a guideline, not a rule book. Don't let anyone fool you into thinking that a program needs to be adhered to 100% to the gram. I tend to think of a program as guideline. On days where I'm feeling fantastic, I'll push the weight a little heavier. On days where it's just not happening, I'm not going to force myself to miss over and over again. I'm going to scale the weight back and look towards the next day. Being able to have that intuition and make those correct training decisions, I felt to be a valuable skill set to have when it comes to progressing in Olympic weightlifting. Now 2, keep it simple. Don't listen to everyone on the internet all at once and create a program that you can not only fail to adhere to, but you also hate. Even if it means programming something that's not even conducive to the Olympic lifts, but it gets you turning up to the gym and enjoying yourself, I would urge you to program those exercises, as actually enjoying the training process is pivotal in continuous progression in weightlifting. And the last one, when it comes to accessories, aside from maybe a tape a week, you don't need to completely remove bodybuilding, plyometrics, core work, and other accessories from your program. I tend to keep them in to a degree year round, even if it means just finishing the session off with 1 to 2 sets of bodybuilding work, throwing in some core, and then depending on what you enjoy doing and what you feel your weaknesses are that need attention, using that energy wisely. Now, if you want to experience more programs to perhaps learn from or something to follow that you trust, I have a free 4-week technical intensive program. I'll put it down in the description. It has a 4-week program as well as a positional playbook. The aim of that program is to work on your technical ability amongst a range of different specific technical exercises relating to the snatch and the clean and jerk. You may learn a few new variations or the structure of the program you can then use for your own programming, or perhaps you want to train with me, join my team, get year-round programming and feedback from yours truly. All of that is down in the description below.